Perfect.
And Mark, you can't hear though. No, he can't hear what's going on.
Okay, well, give the headpiece to Mark. Hello, and welcome to Northern Telly. Sorry, Johnny, 1 second.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Mark. 1 second. My name is John Ryan, Posterous Ryan even. You're very welcome. On the panel tonight, Vanessa Foran, celebrity accountant, Professor Niall Nelligan.
No, not a professor, just
I know.
I'm just about to say he's got a fancier title than I have, John.
No, I'm just a lecturer.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no problem at all. Niall is a boffin from DIT, from Dublin Institute of Technology, and also with us is absolute legend, the Prince of Pot, Mr. Mark Emery, all the way from Canada, a man who has served time in prison for his beliefs. 5 years in prison, I gather, Mark.
Well, 5 years in the U.S. federal system, 39 prisons and jails for pot thus far, 33 in Canada, 6 in the United States, 9 out of 10 provinces.
It's quite a wrap.
Yeah, that's, I'm probably one of the only person who can say they've made an adult career of going to jail on principle. It's a nice kind of thing to be able to say, really.
Mark, you're in Ireland because, well, tomorrow's 420, but you will be celebrating 420. Can you explain what 420 is, actually? Because well,
420 starts out ordinarily enough in the late 1970s, simply as a time to meet after school. Back in the 70s and 60s, school went to 4 o'clock. So by the time you were done with your locker and what have you, it was 4:20. So it was just something as simple as that. But a lot of those people from California in that school district went on to become fans of the Grateful Dead. And throughout the 1980s, the Grateful Dead had that 420 code that they had with each other. And I found this out in 1994 when I opened a hemp shop in Vancouver to sort of kickstart our movement there in 1994. And I hired some deadheads. They were delightful people. And then all together, that 420, they yelled at, "It's 420, smoke them if you've got this." And they said, "It's 420, don't you know about that?" And I said, "No." And they proceeded to tell me that if you wanted to know who the cool people were within our culture, if someone asked what time it was and they said 420, that was like indicating they're a pot smoker. Now, of course, it's so universal now. There's not so much the secret society element to it as there was in those days, where you were using it to determine who was cool and who wasn't.
Well, Mark, can I just interrupt you there? I just want to introduce Dan Boyle is also with us.
Dan's mic is off.
Yeah, I've deliberately turned his mic off because of the I'll unmute it now in a second.
All right.
Hi, Dan.
How are you doing? Am I being heard?
You're being heard,
yes,
Dan.
Yes.
Very good, very good. I think we've mastered the technology at last. So.
Okay, am I being heard? Oh, yeah. Dan, I just wanted to welcome you to the panel, and also that we're talking with Mark Emery, who's known as the Prince of Pot, a gentleman who's been in prison for his beliefs. His belief being that cannabis is a innocent plant and very beneficial. Mark, would you like to continue?
Well, it's not so much innocent. Actually, the reason, a normal person might ask, well, why is pot banned? Why is it illegal? What do these governments have against this plant? It doesn't seem very harmful. On the surface, nobody's dying from cannabis. That's actually very unusual in nature. Most things can kill you in certain dosages or certain behaviors. And cannabis is pretty innocuous overall. It's because, actually, though, it's not innocent. In that cannabis, when you consume it, it arouses a critique of dogma, really. We're the free thinkers. And the purpose of all government, ultimately, is to suppress the free thinkers because they want obedience and conformity and citizens to go along, not criticize. And pot people have 5 natural enemies, and that's parents, teachers, politicians, priests, and ultimately the policeman that enforces the previous 4 dogmas. So, anybody who wants unquestioned obedience and untrammeled authority is going to have an awkward time with pot people, and that's why it's illegal.
Mark, tell me about Ireland. You've been here a few times. Do Do you feel that we're any closer to legalization or decriminalization?
Well, nothing's happening in a vacuum on this earth anymore. So Ireland, like everyone else, is being buffeted by this constant news. I mean, when I started this in 1990, 28 years ago, there was no internet, and there was candidly no activism of any relevant kind going on in North America. And certainly the media never had anything but just people being busted and making us look like bad people. But now we're swamped with a worldwide wave of information about cannabis, its medicinal uses, its industrial uses, the sheer value of the industry worldwide. And there's also so much great science going on right now. I mean, we co-evolved with marijuana very much. The marijuana plant uses humans because the most important thing for all plants is survival and reproduction. Well, there's no plant on this earth as dominant as the cannabis plant anymore because having co-evolved with it, humankind has taken it to every corner of the earth. So every town, village, place on earth is growing cannabis. It's in the Arctic, the Antarctic, every continent. I mean, there's no other plant that has that range of vegetation that is growing everywhere on the planet. Every other plant species is limited to a certain zone or place. So the fact that humans have taken this plant because it's so useful everywhere, and at the same time that plant has manipulated us pleasantly into doing so, is a really great story of humankind, how this fabulously useful plant has co-evolved with us and how we have grown together and how we use each other.
And discovered by an Irishman.
Yes, Shaughnessy, I believe. And actually, he has some famous correspondence in Canada when he was sharing that early information in the 1840s. He's the earliest English-speaking writer to document the scientific effects of cannabis. That is literally dosing himself, which was really unknown before then.
Well, next to you on our list of faces there is Niall Nelligan. He's from the law department at DIT, the Dublin Institute of Technology. And Niall, I know you're not an advocate of the use of the herb, but you are an advocate of reform of law in this area. Isn't that right, Niall?
Well, quintessentially, John, it's a matter of law reform. The global era of cannabis prohibition is coming to an end. So it's not a question of if we head towards regulation, it's now just a question of when.
There we go.
And I have this saying is you can only delay the inevitable.
No worries.
Sorry,
All right.
Vera's just arrived and
Yeah, hello,
upstaged
Vera.
me.
Hello there.
Hello.
So,
I said bye to you, Olga. Okay.
Hello.
Bye. Hi.
First, before I get on to the main thing, Vera, what a job you did last Sunday
I
night.
wasn't doing a very good job at joining the hangout tonight. Olga had to help me.
It's not easy. It's not
Where
easy.
is Olga?
I think she's joining now.
Vera, can I introduce Dan Boyle from the Green Party? Sadly, nothing to do with cannabis.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
Hi, Vera. How are you?
Mark Emery who is from Canada, but he's in Dublin tonight at a non-disclosed location because he's having a smoke. Mark
Hi,
Emery,
Mark.
he's the president.
Lovely. How are you doing?
No,
I'm having a lovely time in Dublin.
he's gone to
That's
prison.
good. That's good.
But Vera, he's gone to prison for his belief in the legalization of cannabis. So he's got
39 of them anyway.
That's terrible.
Vera walked from Cork to Dublin, Mark.
Oh, this woman. That's wonderful to meet you, Vera. That's terrific.
Oh, it's lovely to meet you too.
And Vera won a People of the Year award the other night in Dublin.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Does it come with any money?
Unfortunately not. No.
Okay.
You deserve
Because
it.
there's famous and then there's rich, right? And you kind of find
Yeah.
that fame will be a burden, but rich is always good. So if there's any cash money there.
There's not much so far anyway.
You've got the oil, you've got the license, and now you've the People of the Year award. Vera, what? Just to give some background, Vera's daughter Ava has Dravet syndrome, and was suffering up to 30 seizures a day. And I suppose you researched on the internet, Vera, didn't you?
Yeah, we would have. I suppose we would have had, with there being such a tiny community of people with the Dravet syndrome in Ireland, you kind of very quickly started looking to England and America and Canada, of course, as well. And I suppose then it was from there, seeing the success stories of Charlotte Figge and, you know, so many other little kids over there, that would make you think, gee, I better look into this. You know, I better do some research about it. And of course, there's so much evidence out there, and there's so many people out there that, you know, when you know nothing about cannabis at all to begin with, there's so many people out there to help you, to get you on the road. And that's very much what happened to us. I think that's why I think it's so important to share information with other people, because when you're starting off and you don't know anything, it's very, very hard to find if other people aren't willing to help you.
Would you have had a bad kind of would you have stigmatized cannabis users or anything like that? Would you have a lower opinion of them?
No, I wouldn't. Not at all. I wouldn't have.
But I mean,
I'd say I'd be the kind of person like that. You know, I take everybody as they are, and once they're decent, you know, like if they don't do you any harm, they're doing no harm. Do you know what I mean?
Right, but you wouldn't have been a smoker yourself at any time, like
Pardon?
You wouldn't have been a smoker yourself.
No, it wouldn't suit me. Not really. No, I'd just fall asleep. So, like, you know, it wasn't. No, I'm afraid it was just the typical too many drinks was my thing, you know.
Fair enough. So you researched this, and what was the decision that sort of, okay, we're going to go for this. We're going to get this for Ava.
We were very we were dealing very quietly with Ava's illness for a lot of years, you know. Like, she'd been diagnosed in 2010, and we went through all the pharmaceutical medications up till 2015. And really, there was a very simple few moments that changed my perspective completely forever, when they said, take your daughter home and make her comfortable. There's nothing more that we can do, only monitor her seizures. And I kind of said, like, I knew what they meant, but I just wanted them to say to me what they meant. And I said, are you telling me that you can do nothing and, like, my daughter is going to die? And they said, well, there's nothing more that we can do other than monitor her. So, I mean, either something was going to be done, or Ava's welfare was going to be in imminent danger. So I started a change.org petition, and of course naively thought that if I met Simon Harris and explained my story to Simon, that he would be compassionate enough to help us. But sure, it took 8 months to meet Simon for the first time, and down along the road we kind of discovered that well, things aren't as straightforward as compassion for a child. You know, there's a lot more factors in the background than just wanting to help a little girl.
So you just to move on with you secured the oil first in Barcelona. You went to a kind of a clinic in Barcelona.
Yeah, well, you know, I think that the gentleman there that got arrested, I'd say I wasn't too far away from it myself. When we returned from Barcelona that time, I suppose technically I was arrested. We came off the plane. The Calapa Clinic over in Spain is a tremendous place. The doctors, consultants, we had our consultation. We went over. We got our prescription. We got our medication. But I suppose I was stubborn, and I was very determined that, like, I wasn't a criminal, and we went over to get the medication, and I wanted to come back with it, and to be able to have supervision for my daughter with it. So they lined us up against the wall, all the passengers off the plane. They got sniffer dogs out. They ran the dogs up and down the side of the passengers. They didn't find the oil.
No, I don't think the dogs can detect the oil.
Huh?
I don't think the dogs can detect the oil. Sorry.
They didn't detect this anyway, but sure, they knew, the lads knew what they were about, and I walked over with it, and I said, maybe this is what you're looking for, and then we got arrested. And
sorry,
we were
sorry, Vera. We being Gino Kenny, the TD, and your husband, Tom, is it?
Paul.
Paul, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
So the three of you were technically got arrested there at the airport.
No, Paul wasn't there.
Oh, sorry.
Because somebody had to stay at home with my mom to look after the lads. So it was I went and did it. And Gino Kenny, the TD, and Luke McFlanagan, the MEP, both of them were with me. So the three of us were questioned separately about it. Right. And I really feel like it was very interesting. There was the two ladies that I was talking to inside in the room, they were mortified, absolutely mortified to be taking this off me. They didn't support taking this medication off of me at all. And Gino and Luke really kind of said the same thing, that the people that were speaking to them, they had to do their job. They did their job. They did what they had to do. What else were they going to do? But they weren't, we weren't really, criminals that I'd say they'd be dealing with every day, No,
I'm sure Mark is familiar with that kind of the regular police or cops who would stop you. Mark would be sympathetic, I'm sure. Oh, sorry. Mark is.
I'm fascinated with what's gone on. I'm always grateful when sympathetic people get charged in reality, because these are the kind of people we need in the forefront of what's seen of as the movement. And what is the movement? An element of ideology that seeks change, in this particular case for cannabis laws. And the most sympathetic person is a mother of a child that's challenged greatly with health. And so I'm always grateful when the state overreaches and does something so foolish as to impugn a mother's concern for her child. So I'm hoping that the oil is doing great things. Come to Canada too. I can definitely arrange for oil from Canada if you're not already getting it from Canada. We grow a lot of cannabis and we produce enormous quantities of everything.
Yeah. She's getting it from Bedrocan in Holland, and it's 10% CBD and 2% THC. So at the moment, anyway, it's really good.
Is that real cannabis bud, or is that Dronabinol? Because I looked at when I was in Italy, I saw some Bedrocan, and I was kind of convinced that they had sprayed Dronabinol, which is synthetic THC, onto buds to get that exact 20% or whatever they're telling you. How do they get it so accurate all the time?
I think it's the real thing. Maybe Niall might know better than me there about that. Would you?
No. I have to be honest. I don't.
It says on your jar if it's Dronabinol, but that is synthetic THC that I would.
It's not written on the jar, so definitely not. No,
really?
and I would be. Yeah, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope I hope it's the real thing. But okay, great. Well, thanks for the information.
Thanks.
No problem. If you find out otherwise, let me know. Yeah.
Well, see, when I looked at the Italian Bedrocans, it said 22% Dronabinol, and that's a synthetic THC that I thought they might have been spraying on plant matter in order to get that consistent 22% every time. Because typically plants aren't like that; they're not predictably a certain THC.
Yeah, I think
So
I think Ireland, we could be the producer of the very, very best cannabis, the healthiest.
Well, this brings up the current wave of problems with this new regime of legalizing cannabis or legalizing medical. Is in a way governments are certainly legalizing the industry, but they're not really legalizing the people to go and get it easy or without a lot of rigmarole. This is the most useful plant ever put on Earth, and it's being told it's like plutonium, is that we're given all these obstacles to getting just very straightforward, super useful plant.
Mark, Vera then had to move to The Hague in the Netherlands. Vera, when was that? About a year and a half ago, wasn't
it? We left on the 17th of June last year. Like the CBD was working tremendously well, but the seizures were sort of starting to creep back in a little bit more. Because
the oil you were getting was only CBD, it had no THC.
Yeah, we were originally on the Charlotte's Web only, and it was wonderful. But just kind of over the few months, like the Dravet syndrome, which Ava has got, is particularly vicious, and it's particularly prone to kind of breaking through other or any, like, be it pharmaceutical medications. And we were very concerned that we were kind of going down a slippery slope again. So we said we'd have to go, that like we couldn't fight at home anymore for it. So we went to The Hague, and yeah, that was horrendous, I must say. Like, putting 4 children into the back of the car and driving up to Dublin, over crossing a ferry, across England and down to Holland. It was horrific, but we got there. We got our GP originally. We got our neurologist, but there was a lot of stress, like kind of finding accommodation, worrying about the financing of it. You know, and people were so good, and without the people that supported us via the GoFundMe page, we wouldn't have been able to sustain ourselves over there for 6 months. Right. We hoped that we would be back within 3 months, but they still weren't satisfied in September that we had enough information or clinical evidence, as they called it, for the government. So we ended up being there until December. And it was really hard. It was really...
but the oil is, you could legally use it in The Hague, but you couldn't get a prescription. Is that it? From
Pardon? You
couldn't get a prescription? Was that?
Oh gosh, no, we had a prescription. Yeah. We had our prescription for our CBD and our THC, but and it was, which both are classified as medicine over in Holland as well. But we couldn't bring the THC back to Ireland because we'd be breaking the law when we'd enter the Irish jurisdiction again.
Of course. Sorry,
so
Vera,
we had, yeah.
I was going to ask you if you were Dutch and Ava, you were bringing Ava to Dublin, there's an exemption for her medication, right?
Yeah, there's a special license that you can get for a period of, I think it's described as the holiday period, but it can be something up to like 25 or 27 days that you can leave your country. Like, if you're a Dutch resident, you can leave your country on holiday to Ireland or England or whatever and stay with your medication in the country. Then there's just some forms to fill out. You know, they're so well organized. They're wonderful people.
And but you couldn't avail of that.
No, we could have availed of coming back for so many days, right. but sure, really, what good was that going to be for us? Because if we flew back, and the thing is, we went on the boat because Ava wasn't well enough to fly, and we flew home because she was well enough to come home on the plane, you know, which will show you how much improvement she was after experiencing. But like, if we came home for 3 weeks, we'd have to fly everybody home. We'd have to fly back out again. We'd still be illegal at home. And it was just a nightmare. No matter what you were doing, it was upsetting for somebody, you know, for everybody.
And in December then, Simon Harris gave you the license then to obtain the CBD oil with the THC in Ireland. Yes,
yeah. I mean, the CBD oil is legal in Ireland, but it's only classified as what is it? It's classified as a food supplement in Ireland, which is ridiculous, because considering what it's done for Ava, it clearly should be immediately brought to be recognised as a medicine. But the THC is only legal, is it 0.02% up to 0.02 or 0.03%. So our THC was 2%, so we had to have the license for that.
Okay. Ava, would you tell Mark and the panel how much this is a month?
Well, I seem to be doing all the talking here, lads. Sorry.
You're so good at it. Here. Actually, just one thing, John. I can only see half of Vera's face. Yeah,
can you see me now?
You can see you now, Vera. That's it.
Okay.
That's
sorry. I was kind of leaning on the chair. That's me. But you asked about the cost of it. The cost, you see, Ava's prescription or her dose of medication is dependent on weight. So, like, I really like that about the oils, because, well, that kind of means, like, my child is getting the oil specifically for her size, whereas another child is getting the weight specifically for their size. It's almost like it's tailor-made, but it's extremely expensive. Like, for an ordinary family, it is. It's the last batch now was between 4,000 and 5,000 euros.
Wow.
It's just
And
How much is
Huh?
that? How much oil is that? 4,000 or 5,000 euros.
well, I suppose we're going through like I'll get the bottle there for you. We're going through like about 5 or 6 bottles a week. Is it? No, we're not. No, we're not. Sorry, we're probably going through about like 4 bottles a week of the
And how-
CBD. That's the. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
say something
Yeah.
here, because then you say something. If you put it up there and say something like, then we can have a look at the.
Okay. That's it there. I'm not good at this. Stop laughing.
No, it's me actually.
That's not a very big bottle. You say you use one of those every 2 days?
No, that's you've stumped me there now a little bit. I'd say this would last. She's on like 1.3 of an ml twice a day. So I think it's about every 4 days we go through a bottle, I think.
Okay. How much is one bottle?
We have. Oh God! Because we were buying something like. See, Paul went over for it. It's
Many.
I think we got 27 or 28 bottles of it for the 3 months. Would that be about right? I think.
Okay.
And so that was 4,000 euro,
Yeah.
27 bottles. So it's
Wow.
about 135 euro
Yeah,
a bottle.
yeah.
Let's see.
I could be wrong. I think we maybe there
And-
might
and
have been
what's the
30.
what's the volume of that bottle?
Pardon?
What's the volume?
What's the volume of that one bottle?
It's 10%. It's a 10 mLs.
Yeah, 10 milliliter doses, and like 10 mLs.
Does it, Mark? It sounds very expensive.
Yeah, it can't be just 10 milliliters.
Oh God!
Well, it looks like 10.
Paul is so much better at this than I am. Just
No problem.
give me.
This
Someone
seems
tells me
It's just embarrassing. Sorry. 1 second.
Dan,
Can you come up and answer a question about the volume in the bottles?
Poor
Because I
Dan
can't-
hasn't got a chance to get a word in.
sorry.
By the way, Dan, that's great. You guys came up with a policy on decriminalization in cannabis.
Yeah, I'm surprised it was treated so
How many
so
bottles?
benignly, but it's to help the debate. I mean, also Gino Kenny's bill in relation to the medicinal use has to be acknowledged, and it's going through the Oireachtas. Well, it's had its obstacles, but at least it's still being considered, and it shows that the wind is blowing, if you pardon the pun, in a particularly different direction at the moment.
No, I think it's only a question of time before we build a regulation for the medicinal and ultimately the adult use. The sort of view I take is rather doing it incrementally with decriminalization first, then medical, and then adult, is actually to do it comprehensively so that you have proper rules and regulations set down. I just have my concerns that sometimes if you drip feed it over a period of time, that it can be manipulated a little bit, not in the best way, as Mark will be able to explain to you of his experience in Canada over the last year as the process towards regulation is taking place.
Yeah, I can accept that. But I suppose you're talking about a cultural change, and cultural change, as we know, is never very easy. But we're living in interesting times, even in a Chinese sense, and Ireland seems to be moving faster in relation to social changes than we have in decades before this. And,
Isn't it a wonderful thing?
Well,
indeed.
thanks to
It
people
is.
here. Vera,
31 bottles, 4 days, 10 mLs in the bottle. Sorry about that. Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm like, my husband is so much better at things. I'm just all talk me, you know. Yeah.
Vera, is that the pharmacy in The Hague? They make the oil, don't they?
Yeah, they make the oil. Actually, I wasn't in the pharmacy or sorry, in the lab, but Paul was in the lab and he said it's amazing.
Yeah.
And the pride with which they produce the product, I mean, they're really proud of what they're doing there. So like they were lovely people to deal with, you know. They were all about Ava. They really care, you know. Yeah.
And
You know what's unfortunate is that if we lived in a truly legal environment, I mean, you think it should be legal for a woman like this, but that's still a prohibition price. You know, when I'm thinking, you know, that's 4,000 euros, which in Canada is 6,500 Canadian dollars for something that lasts essentially a month. That comes from a plant, as we've already discussed, is everywhere on Earth and is available to every person to grow it in whatever quantity they like at a next to no cost.
Yeah.
And yet here's the monthly budget of a woman with a child in need that's $7,000 of Canadian money a month and 4,000 euros a month.
And somebody,
There's something not right about how this is all working out.
yeah,
And that if plants really belong to the people, this woman would be able to have people grow whatever she needed and then do all these extractions herself and have as much as she needed at next to no cost.
Yeah.
And yet
Yeah.
this is her in a legal environment, how she's behaving legally, and yet still being treated as if she's buying on the black market for some nefarious criminal purpose.
Yeah, and we still have to leave the country enough to go and get it. So, like,
But you see,
we're not. Yeah.
you still have to come to
And
the
it
Hague
doesn't
every
make
3
sense
months.
to any normal person. But for some reason, you can't get politicians to ever say, you're right. There shouldn't be any regulation to cannabis. People should just be able to grow it if they want to, and we'll leave it at that. They always muck it up by making these weird exclusivity regulatory things that exclude ordinary people from anything to do with growing these plants.
Mark, how many plants would Vera have to grow to produce that much oil?
Oh, listen, you can grow, first of all, you can grow very big plants. I've been to about 15 countries in the last 4 months, going to wherever gardeners are growing marijuana. And in Uruguay, the people grow largely 6 plants. That's what they're allowed to. And they're usually enormous, producing over a pound each. Well, let's use a pound, say 500 grams on a plant. 500 grams off a plant will produce anywhere from 40 to 60 grams of oil extract. 40 to 60 grams, right? And that's why I'm saying these oil products from Bedrocan, these are all overpriced.
Yeah,
Because
that's
it's
the
Very
market.
dear. Yeah.
It's
very dear.
not difficult to distillate the active ingredients from cannabis. And if you had, say, 1 kilogram, which in Canada is worth about $6,000, 1 kilogram alone will give you 80 to 120
But
grams.
you know, Mark, the thing was, to get the license, we didn't really have a choice, because we were told. Now, it's my understanding that Tilray is a definite alternative going into the future in Ireland. But when we were meeting Simon Harris, Simon Harris and his team told us that it was a different jurisdiction over in Canada, and that Tilray wasn't an alternative. So our only option was Bedrocan. And like, it's extremely dear, but there was nowhere else to go, because that was what the doctors would prescribe. And that was the only medication that could be granted the license for. Because when we investigated further with the medication from the Kalapa Clinic, we wouldn't be able to apply for a license with the product in the Kalapa Clinic, because it didn't meet, you know, guidelines or whatever it was.
I know this is so humiliating that cannabis is one of the world's safest plants.
Yeah.
The possibility of death is zero. The possibility of hazardous misuse is almost zero. It's got a historical efficacy record that spans 10,000 years. And yet you are still going through these bizarre hoops as though, again, that cannabis is something to be feared and something dangerous, which is not true. And so here you are, inconvenienced and expensed all this cost, and on top of which, you know, you've got a daughter in a precarious health situation.
And the thing is, if
doesn't
it was
make
taken,
sense.
if it was taken seriously, and if it was given the respect that it deserved, you wouldn't be in the position where you have to prove yourself. Like we were in Holland, having to provide clinical evidence, having to prove that it worked. And Ava was seizure free from when we arrived. So we had like June, July, August, September, October, and it was getting harder and harder. And, you know, we had all those months of seizure freedom. And yet, you know, they still didn't have enough evidence. And, you know, you would be some nights when I was sitting in that apartment on my own, looking at the walls, like you'd be saying, Jesus, how much longer do I have to be here? Like, how much more evidence do these people actually need?
Yeah. Sorry, Ava, can I just go back just the practicalities then? Mark, if say each household could grow 6 plants, would 6 plants be enough for Ava to provide for Vera to provide for Ava?
Well, here's the thing that, you know, a number is a number. It's not a moral value. If it's okay to grow 6 plants, why not 60 or 600? As soon as somebody actually says you can grow whatever you like, it'll have no value finally, no financial value, no money value added because it's illegal value. I mean, after all, cannabis takes 3 months to harvest. It's not any more particular challenging to grow than cucumbers or tomatoes. And it can be grown on that scale and at those prices. That's the reality of it. My dream is that it's so common that cannabis has no real monetary value, only a medicinal and spiritual value.
Yeah.
But 6 big plants would certainly produce enough oil.
Well, no,
Mark,
no,
you know, it's very interesting because in the states that have regulated, more particularly Colorado and Washington, the price for a gram of cannabis has effectively diminished substantially over the last 2 years. It's about
in Oregon, it's plummeted.
$6.
Yeah, Oregon has just dropped through the floor.
Yeah,
But that's good.
in Dublin, the estimated
how
street
you-
price is 17 euros 68. I think that's about 23 Canadian dollars. Forgive me if I'm wrong about that. That's the price in the illicit market, and yet in the regulated market, the price is on the floor. So maybe you're kind of moving in that direction. It's becoming more commonplace. But I suppose the positivities that come with regulation is that the reports coming back from the Colorado government is that youth use of cannabis has remained static. So the control mechanisms put through in regulation are actually working. There has been no increase in road traffic incidences. To that end, it seems that regulation, if it's done properly, works. But what I would like to ask you, Mark, is some of the difficulties that you are encountering and have encountered over the last year as the Trudeau government has moved towards regulation. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, I'm glad you said move towards regulation, because people think they're moving towards legalization, but it's not legalization. Whereas in the current law, the one that's right now, we have 8 criminal offenses or Controlled Drugs and Substances Act violations that involve cannabis: possession with intent to sell, cultivation, selling, conspiracy, and a few others. And then there's 8. That's total. Well, they've changed that, and now there's 45 new federal penalties for cannabis. Many more driving ones. It's an offense. And then they gave the provinces, 13 separate jurisdictions, the control over the distribution. So then there's hundreds and hundreds of rules now about how to buy it from a government monopoly, where these monopolies can be, how you'll be able to carry it, where you can smoke it, where you can't smoke it on the street or at home or in apartments. So we're being regulated right into a worse situation than we had before. Because at least to bring a criminal sanction to you, to take you to court, requires the state to marshal a whole bunch of resources. It's got to be worthwhile, you know, and so there's a filtering system there. But now in the new penalties, the 45, and the cops don't even have to testify. They just need to sign an affidavit saying the marijuana is marijuana, therefore it doesn't need to be tested anymore. All the kinds of things that kind of restricted the state before in order to prove you actually had marijuana was a lot of rigmarole and cost. And now the Trudeau government has eliminated a lot of those impediments to law enforcement and to the bureaucracy, and we're more likely to be convicted by a much larger array of criminal offenses. What the government's done in Canada is they've legalized the industry, and on that note, handed it over to largely rich stock market crony friends. Stocked the board of directors of most of these places with at least one cop and a politician. It's shocking. There's 45 high-profile elected officials, police chiefs, NARCs, RCMP, all sorts of people, premiers of provinces, former prime ministers on these boards of directors of these cannabis companies that all go to the government to get a license. It's gotten so corrupt, and it didn't need to be that way. Legalization should simply make legal what is already going on.
So it's the good old boys have done well out of it.
The good old boys.
Oh, of course, and so many people have been buying into these pot stocks, and it's just like a big bonanza, and it's sure to be a big bubble because the market already existed. It's not like when iPhone came out, no one was buying iPhones before. That's 7 billion new customers. But in Canada, everybody who was buying marijuana already was buying it from someone, quote, illegally. Yeah. So when all these legal places are producing huge amounts of marijuana, they've got to understand that there's no shortage of marijuana. There was no need for new sources of marijuana production. That was already being met by the existing market. So there's going to be a lot of additional marijuana, which is great, but it'll keep the price low. And the Canadian government added 800 bureaucrats to their cannabis control board system. So already we've got thousands of people being hired by governments in Canada for the bureaucracy of this marijuana industry. And here's the thing, every single store across Canada, whether it's a government monopoly like in 5 places or the other 5 places where private interests are allowed to have a shop, everybody still has to buy from a centralized government agency. So what's fun about that is what I would say. They're trying to rewrite the script. They were losing control of the narrative, so they said, let's just call it legalization, but make it Prohibition 2.0, and then we'll try and regulate them into prison. And that's what you're seeing, is that there's so many rules and regulations. The ordinary person is still criminalized. It's just the elites that run everything are okay. Cops, politicians, and these big businesses.
Well,
so
we'll probably look back.
Don't give our crowd any bad ideas.
Mark, Vera, when she won her award, the People of the Year award, among the recipients that night was Catherine Corliss, and 2 years ago, Maurice McCabe and John Wilson won the Garda Whistleblowers. But Vera, I didn't see it live, but I followed it on Twitter, and then we were sent the highlights from RTE, and you were cut off as you came to the point where you were, I guess, being critical of the government. And
you can go on my Facebook page and see the whole thing, though, so don't worry.
Well, I was hoping that you would give us the bits that were cut out.
Oh well, I suppose. Oh, couldn't see you there for a moment. Yeah, I am. Oh no. Well, I suppose I just thanked my husband and my mom, because like they were the backbone of everything. Like without my mother and Paul behind me, there wasn't going to be anything that was going to be done. I wasn't going to be able to, be on the phone or do the things that kind of had to be done to get attention for Ava. And I just said we were let down by the government. I said that we were let down by the government, but we were never let down by the Irish people for the last 2 years, because we weren't. Because without them, Ava, I don't think without them, Ava wouldn't have her medication. And Leo Varadkar was in the audience, and I'd met Leo outside at the door as he was walking in. He was fortunate enough that I was the first person that he saw when he walked in the door. And I'd asked him about the legislation, and I'd asked him, was he going to lift the money message on Gino Kenny's bill? And he said to me, the legislation is flawed, it's going nowhere. And I was horrified. And he walked away from me, and I thought he was very rude, because I mean, whatever else I've done, I've always tried to be, reasonable and, always hopeful that people would respect what we were looking for and respect Ava.
Did he shake your hand?
And I was so cross by the time he walked away, I can't actually remember. But he didn't inquire after Ava, so that's a bigger offence than not. That's a bigger offence to me than shaking my hand or not shaking my hand. And I went back to my table, and I sat down and I had a think. And when I went up on the stage, I directed what I needed to say to him. And I spoke to him afterwards, and he said to me, which is a lie, and this is a lie now, and bear that in mind. He said that the amendments were never sent to him for Gino Kenny's bill. And that's not true. Because I had, over the course of the time, I'd asked Gino on several occasions, did you hear back? Did you hear back? What's the story? And he said, we heard nothing back. And those amendments were sent to Leo Varadkar, and he said that they never received anything.
And Gina,
and imagine, like, it's my daughter, my little girl, and she is only alive because of this medication. And the thing is, there's women out there that are watching monitors and looking at the clock, wondering when their child is going to wake up, or when they're going to have their next seizure, or what's going to happen to them. And this guy says to me at the door walking in that he's too busy, that he's on a tight schedule with RT. He's too busy. He's got to go. But geez, we were busy too from 2010 until October of 2015, counting seizures every day and wondering whether our daughter was going to survive till the following night,
And Gina, sorry, Vera, go on.
Yeah, sorry, no, I'm just getting, it's just disgusting. And like, we're so happy and so delighted that we've got the license for Ava. But what about all the rest of the people? I mean, I have messages coming to me all the time, like, where do I go? What do I do? And you'd be doing your best for people. But like, I mean, if they legislated for it properly in the country, people would be able to access this via their consultants. A lot of the consultants are interested in prescribing this medication for their patients because they want to help their patients. Some of them are obstinate and strange and do not want to engage with reality at all. But there are many that do,
Well, Leo was a GP or a doctor himself. I mean, I suppose his own personal bias would be for big pharma, and we don't need marijuana, we don't need cannabis.
I don't know, but I believe his sister is an epidemiologist over in England, and he said there's no evidence. I mean, that doesn't make any logical sense. I mean, if you think about it, why is the United Kingdom the biggest exporter of cannabis to other countries in the world? I believe, is that. Pardon? GW Pharma, sure. Yeah. They're the biggest producers of cannabis, but
I just say Niall's mic is a bit distorted.
Oh yeah.
It's a bit distorted now.
Is it? Can you hear me?
Oh yeah,
right?
now it's fine. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Vera, I interrupted you as you were talking about GW Pharma being the world's largest producer of cannabis.
Yeah, I mean, I find that really upsetting, because on the street where we lived over in Holland, there was another family in the exact same situation as us with a little boy who had desperate seizures. His name is Alfie Deacon, and his mom, Hannah, and her husband were living on the street just 10 doors down from us. And I mean, they had to go home, and Alfie couldn't go home with his THC, and they're fighting for medical cannabis over in England as well. And that little boy is going back to a country that is producing cannabis hand over fist, but won't legalize it for their own people. And they may not be producing it to the same level in this country, but geez, there's people suffering as we speak with so many different things that Leo Varadkar does not have the right to dismiss people like this, and he does not have the right to control Gino Kenny's legislation by keeping that money message and holding it back until such time as the government dissolves and the bill will be gone. That's completely unacceptable, and it's just infuriating. It really is. It really is.
Dan, politically speaking, there's no traction for Leo in supporting any legislation like this. I mean, the Fine Gael voter base would be appalled by marijuana or the thought. Am I right?
Well, there's a load of Fine Gaelers down my direction here that aren't appalled by it anymore, because they've woken up to it. But just saying that, sorry for interrupting.
No, Vera, I
think Vera is very right there. I think the problem is that, and we'll probably see it sadly in the next couple of weeks, the two Irelands are very much urban and rural at the moment, and while there are Liberal voters in rural Ireland and Conservative voters in urban areas, it's still a situation where the traditional vote in rural communities is what's sustaining Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael in particular, and the change is more likely to happen in urban areas. Vera, for instance, I don't want to kind of concentrate too much on it, but it seems to be very much a Cork thing. I mean, Josie Erie was very much responsible for bringing divorce into this country. There was a woman called Gladys Ryan who challenged fluoridization in the 60s, but lost that case, but also brought out the question that in our constitution there are certain implied rights.
Are you saying we're kind of rebellious then, is it?
I think it's a Cork thing, Vera. What can I say? Yeah.
They would say that, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but it's not only a Cork thing, it's a Cork woman thing, you know.
Well, what Vera has done is she's managed to connect with the most powerful constituency in Ireland at the moment, and that's women between the ages of 25 and 45. And by connecting with them, the government really foolishly messed this one up. I mean, Dan, we had experience, I suppose, of dealing with the second Lisbon referendum, and we would have known that is a core group that you have to connect with if you want to win a referendum. And Vera, I suppose, by the situation of her daughter Ava, has brought, one, she's informed that community, she's informed swing voters, and she's made, people wake up and understand that actually cannabis has a strong medical value. But she's also highlighted some of the bureaucratic difficulties and some of the political bloody-mindedness that has surrounded cannabis for, really the last 60 or 70 years in particular. So Vera, in many ways, you've played a very, very significant role that maybe, I guess you probably do appreciate, but maybe not as much as really is the case.
Yeah.
Well, when you push it like that, I don't know. I mean, I think I don't know about referendums or the votes in the referendums, but I think that also sometimes the older person gets overlooked a bit. I think that,
This is true.
I think the older people, like a lot of the meetings that Gino invited me to speak at when we went to them, the age profile was extraordinarily different. Some of the meetings you'd go to was all men. Some of the meetings that the majority would be women. And there was one or two of the meetings back, one in Cork and one in Tralee that we went to. And honestly, there wasn't a single person under 55 at the meetings. And what they were treating, what the older people were treating was the arthritis, the glaucoma, the cancer, all of these things. There was ladies there that their enjoyment was going out playing a 45 game of cards a couple of nights a week or going to the bingo, and they weren't able to go anymore until they started the CBD oil. And they were at they came to the meeting because my life has changed. I'm able to do my knitting again. I'm able to go and play my card game with my friends, this kind of thing. So I think sometimes the older person gets kind of a bad rep almost, because like my mother would have been a lady like that, would have thought, oh, well, cannabis now, that's a bad thing. But then when you explain clearly the difference between smoking cannabis and the oils, or, why it's good, I think sometimes the older people are more receptive to taking in the reality than other people are at all sometimes.
Yeah, Mark, I have to say that if there's any group that could get the most benefit out of marijuana, cannabis, it's the elderly. Yeah. I mean, in almost every way,
Here's the thing, is that the prejudice, though, is still with pharmaceutical medicines. What is it? Somebody my age, I'm 60, is theoretically supposed to be on 5, 6, 7 prescription drugs. Yeah. And these come readily, and they're usually subsidized or covered. And, people of an older generation tend to not want to question their doctor either. So there's even less resistance to that. And a lot of it's about aches and pains and what have you. So cannabis would present a terrific natural alternative for a lot of these drugs that are easily available, and probably to some detriment. I'm not on any prescription drugs, happily, but well, I'm also lucky, though. I mean, it's just nice to have been in good health. And
Mark, you vape the cannabis?
No, I smoke bongs, pipes, vaporize. I'm usually in social settings with other people, so I often do whatever. When I've been traveling for 4 months, for example, around various parts of South America and Europe, so I usually do whatever local people do. I'm usually in their presence. So,
what do you think of attitudes in Dublin to cannabis?
Well, the thing is, we're always lacking that political courage, right? For example, We know cannabis is safe. We know it's certainly safer than alcohol and tobacco and prescription drugs, and they're all legal. So why doesn't anybody just sensibly say, well, let's stop this criminalization of cannabis and we'll make it legal? Because if people use cannabis, they're likely going to use less alcohol and less prescription drugs, maybe less tobacco possibly. If it's legal and inexpensive, people won't mix it with tobacco either. So we could have a lot of good situations from that obvious thought. But no one ever says that. No one in an elected position ever acts like that's a rational thing to think.
I know.
They're always so frightened as if cannabis poses some social danger, which it never has.
Mark,
it doesn't have a health danger or a social danger. There's not going to be an increase in schizophrenia. Bad things aren't going to happen, just like bad things are not happening in Colorado or Oregon or Washington or California.
Or over in Holland, when we were there, was the safest place I've ever lived in. There was no crime. You know, it was such a relaxed, comfortable place to get around. Why is this situation like this? Why are we literally begging to pay these overpriced prohibition prices for a medicine that should be readily available without any fuss at all to anyone?
Well, for the Irish experience of that, Mark, it's the fact that large areas of Cork, for instance, have got pharmaceutical factories, and we really defer to big pharma in Ireland. I mean, more so than I think any country in Europe. Would I be right now?
That's a good point, John. Certainly, on the subject of big pharma, there was a very interesting report from the Journal of the American Medical Association. As you know, in America, there's an opioid crisis at the moment. Very seriously addictive medications. But in the states that have regulated for medical use, you've seen a decline in the use of opioid medications by 5.8% where there is medical regulation, and 6.83% in states that have both adult and medical regulation. So big pharmaceutical companies are not fans of regulated marijuana or cannabis. And we've had situations where, for example, in Arizona, you had a large pharmaceutical company lobbying and paying money in the public vote against regulation of cannabis, while at the same time in another state seeking to have a license for their own synthetic version. So, these are factors that we have to take into account in Ireland. Certainly.
No, thank you so much for joining us, Mark, as well. Mark, could you explain what's happening tomorrow at 4:20 at the Customs House Quay?
I believe we're marching somewhere at 4:20. Typically, we would smoke a lot of pot in the hours leading up to 4:20. And then we're going to be in a parade situation, and we'll no doubt end up somewhere where we will smoke the rest of what pot remains after the previous 6 hours.
And what will you say to a member of the Irish police force if they try and stop you?
Well, typically you should be careful with what you say to a police officer. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Actually, it's just best to keep the peace and avoid police officers if you have to. If you're going to have a confrontation with a policeman, you need to plan that so that you get the best advantage from it. So hopefully we'll all just mass and have a very pleasant day.
That's wonderful, Mark. May I thank you very much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. It's been very educating. Nice to meet you, Vera. And best of luck
Lovely to meet you too, Mark. Enjoy the day. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mark. Is Johnny still there?
No, he's not, actually.
Well, tell Johnny to call us when he can.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you. Okay. That was fascinating, Mark. That's to everybody. Did you find Mark fascinating? I found Mark fascinating. Hello.
Really fascinating. I found it very fascinating. I wasn't sure who he was at the start, but now I know, and now I understand. Yeah.
Okay.
Really
so that's Mark Emery. He's the Prince of Pot, and also Niall Nelligan, who's a barrister and is with the law department at DIT, Dublin Institute.
I just need to go for 2 seconds there. Sorry.
No problem, Vera.
Back. Sorry.
No problem at all.
Yeah.
No problem at all. Vanessa, hello.
Hello.
Isn't Vera very impressive?
Yeah, she is. And I'm actually, I was going to ask her a question. Well, I would have thought once she got a license for this condition for her little girl, that it would have been sort of implicit that kids or patients with the same condition would be granted the same license. You know, so I'm surprised that's not the case. But I'm actually, Dan, I'm going to pull you up on there, and another Cork woman, Margaret Best, who went and sued Wellcome over the vaccination.
That's right, Philip. Yeah, that's right.
And I think it was about 15 years. She fought the case on her own. I think she did most of the work on her own. Well, obviously through a solicitor as well, but I think she did a lot of the research herself. And so I just wanted to mention that Cork lady as well. Taking on the man as well.
Shames all of us men and all of us Corkmen in particular. They're a fine group of people. The
well, being a Cork woman myself, Dan, you know.
Vera, Vanessa has a question for you.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I'm after forgetting now, probably. Hi, Vera. Sorry, I when you got the license for Ava, I was just surprised that sort of didn't transfer to other patients. You know,
but it's an individual license.
That's what I mean. I don't mean that it would be shared. What I mean was that once you qualified for one, then there was a precedent set for that condition. And then
that's the bother. There's no precedent set at all. So that's why the legislation is necessary, because they're granting an individual license on a case by case basis. So like you're applying to the government for a license for your medication to bring it out to the other country and bring it into Ireland. But if legislation was brought through, and if cannabis was moved from a category where states that there's no medical value to medical cannabis into the same category that, say, Sativax is in, which I think is category 4, then you'd be in a situation where the consultants in Ireland could prescribe the medication for you, you know. So they have it set up in a way that you have to go through all this torment and all these problems to get the license. But legislation is the answer to take it out of the hands of civil servants and government officials and to put it into the hands of the consultants and people, you know, who are dealing directly with the patients, I think.
Vera, can I say that you're getting loads of support in our mosh pit? We have a chat pit.
Oh, okay.
And Vanessa tells me that it's they're all going mad for Vera. So
yeah. Actually, there was a very good comment there. I'd like to go back to the regulation of it actually in a sec, if you don't mind, John. But there was a comment in there from JDF Reality, and he was saying that that you don't. But it's about the enforcement, really. Well, he got a bit cheeky as well. But what he was saying originally is that in America, if your consultants and all the doctors declared that there's no more can be done for you, which you'd mentioned earlier on was a diagnosis you'd gotten yourself for Ava, that there was no more they could do for her. What he was saying is that when that happens in America, then you actually have a right to try any other unapproved or unregulated treatment. So
I wouldn't have been aware whether that was the case in Ireland or not. I mean,
no, he's just saying that the same needs to be done here. So when a consultant or doctor says there's no more I can do for you, at that point, then in America you can go and.
But can I make a point just to respond to that, right? Which is this: my daughter didn't get medical CBD on its own until October of 16. So she was 7 years old. Medical cannabis shouldn't be the last option. Like there's a friend of mine, Noreen O'Neill. She's got a little boy, Michael, And Michael has recently begun his CBD oil as well, and he's now seizure free. He's a much younger little boy. He's less than 2 years old, and like the thing is, a little child like that would begin the CBD oil earlier, their life is going to be like the damage that the seizures have done to Ava over the years. If there could have been intervention with the medication that worked earlier, so much of the damage that's been done to her brain could have been avoided. You know, like we may never fully know Ava, because we may not be able to, and like we'll get every bit that we can out of Ava, you know, we will. And she's a great girl and she keeps trying like every day. But if the damage wasn't done, you wouldn't have to repair it. So like when that gentleman said about it being your right to try something alternative when nothing else works, well, I would say it should be your right to try medical cannabis much earlier on in the time, rather than having to wait to go through all the stuff that doesn't work and have all that damage done needlessly to yourself or to your child. Because what the CBD and the THC is the gentlest medication I've ever experienced. It honestly is. We've been through them all. I mean, when it was at its worst, we had a cupboard full of medications that weren't working for Ava. You know, half a dozen tablets more a day, and nothing, and seizures in between. So it shouldn't be the last resort at all.
Vera, I won't keep you. What's the latest on the passage of Gina Kenny's bill? I mean, it's not going to go through, according to Leo, in the hotel to you.
Well, it's not going to go through according to Leo at the moment, but sure, that's at the moment. Like there's, you know, hopefully that's not going to continue to be the opinion, you know. There is a meeting regarding the lifting of the money message. Maybe Dan might know. I think it's the 5th of May that meeting is on, about all the bills that are held up with the money message. The money messages on them. But that meeting has been cancelled on three previous occasions. So hopefully it will happen on the 5th of May. But I just think, you know, like anybody that's listening, you know, that's using CBD and THC and it's working for them, like, lads, this is the time to come out and be talking about it. Yeah. Talk about it somewhere, you know. Yeah. Go to your, like, if you can't go to a newspaper, if you can't go to the telly, go to your TD, write to Leo, write to Simon, do something, because this is our chance. This is our real opportunity, like, to get it legislated for. And we need to put as much effort in at the moment as possible to get this done, because this is our chance and we have to take it, I think. What do you think?
Vera, Vera, sorry, Vanessa, 1 second. Vera, I'm frightened of cutting you off, as you say, like RTE did to in the highlights. But I hope we're not keeping you now. If you're exhausted now.
No, I'm fine. I'm grand. I've got tea there. I'm fine. Yeah.
Vanessa just has one last thing to say. Vanessa.
Well, no, it's just that Vera, we kind of touched on this before on the show, and I think once they figure out a way to make money out of it, and or you know, trap a license on legalizing cannabis here, and one thing I wanted to ask Professor Nelligan before he left was that at that meeting he had in Angel Street, you know, Johnny was at it, lads, was it a few weeks ago, was that does anybody know, maybe Dan might, that was anyone from the IFA at that meeting?
No, but that's a good idea.
Because I went through the FWED, is that how I pronounce it? FWED website.
Oh yeah.
And you know, they need to be a bit more consistent with their numbers, but one of the quotes on it, you know, is that Ireland could be the Green Valley of the regulated cannabis industry in the EU by 2025, and worth 230 billion. So like if regulation focuses more as well on introducing what could be introducing a new indigenous industry here, because we in fact we've known there's no Irish Nokia, there's no Irish Microsoft. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And it's all the numbers. Okay, they're not all agreeing, but certainly they're all in the same ballpark of what they're saying about $500 million to the exchequer a year and 25,000 jobs. And it would all happen so quickly. So I really want to get the answers on how easy is it to cultivate here.
Yeah, well,
when you grow it in the fields, I've kind of looked into that a bit, and it's very odd the way the law is about it. You're not allowed grow if you have a field that's along the side of the road. You can't grow cannabis along the road. It has to be in a kind of an internal field away from the road. I mean, I don't know what they think people are going to be doing, like whether they're going to be, sneaking in at night with scissors or something. But like, it's illogical. I mean, for farmers that would have maybe 40 or 50 acres, sure, there could be a whole heap of their property that would be like along the side of the road. They mightn't have that many fields that are inside, further inland. And anyway, even if they did, you might need a good few acres to grow to make a profit on the crop. So that particular point seemed really silly to me for any crop that you can only grow it in certain fields.
No, but do we have the environment for growing? Like our farmers will grow olives if they could. So I'm asking, Vanessa, do we have the?
We're just going to move off this subject. Vera, on behalf of our very rude Taoiseach, I'm very sorry. On behalf of the state broadcaster who cut you off just as you were getting to the most interesting
Can I just give some remarks from the comment for Vera, from the chat pit, please, for Vera, if you don't mind. One of the commenters is Your Heart is a Drum Machine is his name, or her name, and they're saying it was a great speech and well done, and congrats on a well-deserved award, Vera. You. And our friend at the JDF Reality that mentioned about the situation in America and the right to try, he also says that he doesn't know why officials or law enforcement don't do an O'Brien/Lowry and just look the other way. Yeah. So anyway, listen, you should be very proud of yourself, and I'm delighted everything's worked out. And I wouldn't worry too much about Leo. There's no leadership qualities there at all. So I wouldn't take it too personally.
I'm not worried about him. I'm not really worried about him at all. But I just like him to lift the money message and allow the legislation to move forward, so people won't be suffering.
Yeah, but when you thought he was quite rude, I think he's like that even to members of his own cabinet. I think he looks down his nose on everybody. I think he finds us all a distraction, and all his colleagues in Fine Gael a distraction.
Yeah.
So,
Vera, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Maybe you'll come on the show and we'll talk about other stuff other than cannabis. Come on another night if you want, and also
that'd be lovely. Yeah.
And maybe around the time of the bill, we'll have you back on, hopefully.
Very good. That's very. Thanks for inviting me. It was lovely to chat to you.
Thank you very much, Vera.
Take care. So all the best. Well done. Bye. Bye, Vanessa. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Vera.
Okay. Right there. That's great, isn't it? Fantastic.
Dan loves the lighting. Dan loves the mood lighting, doesn't he? Every time you're on, you have a light strategically placed.
It's pure laziness. I live in a ground floor flat of a Victorian house, and the main room, the light fitting is a copper fitting from probably the 1930s. I just haven't repaired it. So I've got a side lamp on one side, and I've got the back light from the back rooms. That's all it is.
Very good. It's good. Very moody, very noir, pink.
Oh well. I have to exercise my artistic tendencies somewhere.
Dan, I wanted to ask you about the polls this morning. Were they as significant as they seem to be in terms of?
Well, I mean, the Leo factor is wearing off. There's a Mary Lou bounce, but Sinn Féin always do better in polls than they do in elections, so we won't know the exact effect of Mary Lou until there is an election. But Fianna Fáil are still significantly ahead of Sinn Féin. Labour went up a percentage, and apparently the Greens are the best of the rest. The one thing is significant, I think, is the depletion of the independent vote. You know, the Shane Ross Alliance, the Independents for Change, less so, and independence is I think what's going to happen in the next election is that there will be a contraction. The Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and Sinn Féin will gain, and it's about how much of the other bloc is going to get re-elected and in what form. But there still won't be enough for a 2-3 party coalition or a single party government. I don't think we'll even get close to that in the next election. So it's a case of, is it Fine Gael going to continue in the current form of being half a government, or does Fianna Fáil pass them out, which I still think is a possibility because things.
Oh, he was cut off. Conspiracy. Hello, Olga. Sorry, we didn't.
John, how are you? Hi, Vanessa. Dan, if you can hear me. No shift tonight.
You weren't on a shift.
I know. No, that was great, John. That was brilliant. Well done.
Ah, Vera's.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Sorry for cutting you off there, Vanessa. Just because I felt like Vera must have been exhausted.
Yeah, because she's up in Dublin last night. She was on the Pat Kenny show and stuff. And
right.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
But somebody said somewhere, all right, that what she said on Pat Kenny. She said what she said here about Leo being a liar.
Oh.
Like just liar. So she said on Pat Kenny last night.
She said it on Pat Kenny last night. Oh, okay. We're only 24 hours late with the news.
It's not really scoop, is it, as such? Anyway,
which was on. No, it was on the main board today. That's where I read it, I think.
I know, I'm joking. Vanessa, you're going to kill me, but you've got some lipstick on your tooth there.
Are you only telling me now?
Well, I would have told you earlier if you'd been a bit nicer to me.
Why did you send me a message?
A little bit nicer, you see.
Oh God!
This is what happens.
I'll do that to you. I'm going to do that to you now sometime, and you'll get a right snot on.
Anyway, Olga, could you? Do we have tomorrow's papers up?
Yes. Let me just see. Yeah. So we have the. We have the Examiner, and we have the Times. So sorry, my computer's having awful trouble.
Oh, okay.
It's just getting old, I think. Okay, hang on. So our favourite story is back, Leo and the Wind Farm. Turns out the Times Ireland edition has a story on it. Can you guys see the screen? Is it showing there?
Yeah, we can see the top of the Irish Examiner, but
oh, oops! Does it not have to?
Hello, Dan.
I'm sorry, it's a problem with my home modem. I think it overheats after an hour.
Yeah, and I've got the exact same problem. I hear it's like the helicopter sound in the back, and then it just. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I heard that. I heard the whirring before.
Yeah.
We cut off. We're just going through tomorrow's papers.
So the Times Ireland edition has a story there. Like I'm just literally reading it now, but Varadkar's Trump email led to wind farm report. Fáilte Ireland ordered fresh review of proposal. So this is a story by Peter O'Dwyer and Sean McCarthy. So Fáilte Ireland ordered a report into a proposed wind farm in County Clare the day after Leo. Sorry, are you not seeing it? No.
No.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I must have knocked it off.
Well, I'm reading it on the main board.
Okay, I'll just. Hang on.
Well, it's not good. That's good for you, Vanessa. But
yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry. Now I'm not sure how that happened.
Okay.
Is it there now?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, so like I said, Peter Dwyer, Sean McCarthy. So Fáilte Ireland ordered a report, and this happened the day after Leo had relayed to Donald Trump's concerns about the development. So remember, he was over and he made that speech in Capitol Hill during the whole St. Patrick's Day shenanigans, and So basically, yeah, Varadkar contacted Fáilte Ireland after he got that call from Trump. Because if you remember, Trump was worried about this wind farm close to his golf resort in Doonbeg. So it turns out that documents released under Freedom of Information showed that Paddy Matthews, a senior executive at Fáilte Ireland, commissioned the report a day after Mr. Varadkar's intervention on February 24th, I beg your pardon. AOS Planning, a consultancy firm, was charged with compiling the report to determine the likely impact on the value of local tourism amenities, including Doonbeg Lodge, owned by Mr. Trump. Records show that on the 25th of February, a personal assistant of Sean Quinn, Fáilte Ireland chief executive at the time, had asked Mr. Matthews for an update on Mr. Varadkar's email. And so this is a quote: "Sean asked me to contact you to see how you're getting on with the response he is waiting to go back to the minister with."
Okay.
So there you go. Then on the far right there by Jennifer Bray, Naughton wins support from cabinet colleagues. Obviously this is over his contacts with Ona Naughton from Hennigan PR.
That means he's gone down, doesn't it?
He's fairly close to it, but it's a bit Stuart Farlum to the Farrella stuff at this stage. Unfortunately, it's still how Irish politics works, you know. But at least we're finding out about it now, and people have to be accountable.
Yeah. Do you think he will be, though? Do you think he'll go?
I think the problem is that he's not part of the Shane, the Independent Alliance. So who would you replace him with in cabinet? The only likely person is Dr. Michael Harty in Clare. So
should
would he be willing? I think he should go. Yeah, I do think he should go.
They could take somebody from the Senate. No, I mean,
the balance is it has to be a rural independent, I suppose. Maybe Michael Fitzmaurice, God help us. I certainly would like to see that.
Oh God. Okay. Hello to Johnny Keenan. By the way.
Yes, nice one. How are you keeping that? Sorry to be cutting across you.
Hi, Johnny.
Johnny, thank you so much for arranging for the Prince of Pot from Mark Emery to be here. I'm just going to finish off the papers, Johnny, for one second. Oh, sorry. Johnny,
Richie has to go, man. Richie,
will you please welcome?
Here.
Will you please welcome?
He has to go. He literally has to run for a bus. So can he do his song?
Of course, Johnny.
Right. So I'm going to hand you over to Richie now straight away, lads. This is a world exclusive. Sorry to be cutting across you, but this you're going to love this for the day that's in it. Be at the Cloud on the Keys tomorrow from 12. There's going to be some really interesting people. Mark, I'm sure, talked about all that. Okay, rock on, lads. Have a great one. Talk to them. Put you over to Richie.
Okay.
How's it going, lads?
Hey,
yeah, so I'm just going to do a song. It's the first song I wrote, first comedy song I wrote. It's a couple of years old, so some of the references might be a little bit dated, but you can just kind of change the names and it's still the same thing, really. So I'll just go straight into the song.
Please do. Richie.
So yeah, it's called Cannabis Tree. I'm sitting here in the boring room. It's just another rainy Thursday afternoon. I'm wasting my time, I got nothing to do. I got a little bit of my own produce. Will anything happen? I wonder. I'm blazing it up into the groove. I'd like to go out and take in the views, or maybe ride a bike or buy an ice cream cone. But I figure I'll just stay at home. I'd probably be felt up by a garter. I wonder how, I wonder why. Just a couple tokes and I'm able to fly. And all that I can see is just a lovely cannabis tree. 'Cause up in my attic, they're all around, spread out on a clothesline, trying them out. And all that I can see is just a green ganja tree. Oh la, da 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 dee da da. GDP smoke weed, aha. Oh, G-Kush. A Friday night in and what's on the late? An interview with Mr. Nice, this could be great. But Tubridy ruins it cause he's a typical cunt. He doesn't like anyone having fun cause he's a conservative and they're all assholes. Vaporizers, they work well with weed. Have a puff of some Candy Kush in my vape, and I know you'll agree. I wonder how, I wonder why they never seize a weight that they can verify, and all that I can see is just an expensive cannabis tree. Cause in evidence rooms, they pass it around. We'll reseal the bag after 2 more rounds of sweet, sweet prohibited cannabis trees. The government is self-preserving, useless bunch, making money selling pharmacana punch. She Mary Harney, she loved the leaf. She had the munchies permanently. She ate one pill. He's a fat bastard. No Labour and the Blues are no better, I call. They never seem to speak any logic at all. Gilmore said it wouldn't be legal because of illegal gangs. That's a contradiction. Gilmore's a ham. How was that asshole the head of anything? And cancer patients, they get relief from weed. Now who the fuck are you if you think you've an opinion, if you do disagree? I wonder how, I wonder why Clinton had a toke but he didn't get high, and all that I can see is just a marijuana tree. Cause in bordering states, they negotiate rounds. A Mexican's life's about a couple of pounds of sweet, hopefully sinsemilla cannabis tree. And I wonder how, I wonder why the Irish public haven't pulled the wool from their eyes. Cause all that I can see, cause all that I can see, cause all that I can see is just a medicinal cannabis tree.
That's fantastic.
Cheers, thanks a million. As I was just saying there, just finish off by saying it, like it's dated because it was like 5 years ago, and I think I have to play it tomorrow at the March. I'm going to try in that time to write something about like the Vera Toomey stuff. You know, to try, you know, basically make it like more current day relevant, because obviously some of the references, even the American, it's probably still happening with Mexican lives, to be honest, in the places that it's not legal in America. Like,
you got Mary Harney.
Yeah, but that. What?
You got Mary Harney and Gilmore there, so we'll have to update those.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking I can leave those in and just continue it on, and put in something about Varadkar and Toomey, like, but. I just one other little anecdote, like if anyone is on the point of not realizing, like, you know, medical cannabis is like, my friend Eru, it would have been his 26th birthday yesterday, and he basically he's an unbelievable comedian, and he died of cancer age 21. And like I just remember how much it struck me. One night he came up and he'd just been from the hospital, and he came up and came up and, oh yeah, even the nurses knew that I was out. And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean the nurses knew that you was like, the nurses said to me, are you out of hash? And I was like, how do they know? And he's like, well, I was like getting sick and stuff. And it's like, he was in hospital, you know, obviously with cancer, and like the nurses knew when he was actually getting sick that meant that he was out of cannabis. Like, which is it's such a ridiculous situation that can happen to somebody, you know?
So pathetic. Richie, how's the Salah song doing? Richie Sheehy is the man behind Kevin, the Cork.
Kevin Murphy, yeah, Cork's biggest Liverpool fan. It's been insane. Obviously, I am a massive Liverpool fan, so it's an amazing thing to, like, you know, I go to Liverpool and I'm treated well, but also I'm like, you know, like, just like I did a gig in Anfield last Friday, and it's just crazy, to be honest, to now be doing this. Like, do you know what I mean?
How many views is that has it got?
I mean, like, on my own YouTube upload, it's like 3.5 million. But if you count like all the re-uploads on Facebook and Instagram, close to 100 million.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Mighty.
Yeah,
Dan,
like,
You're the biggest star. You're the biggest star we've had on the show.
Well, we'll see how long it lasts anyway. Hopefully I can improve on it. Like
another Cork. Richie, good luck
It's like
tomorrow.
up for the match.
huh?
It's like up for the match.
Yeah.
Richie, thanks so much for the song. It was beautiful. You're gonna play that tomorrow at the Custom House Key at 4:20.
Yeah, at the mark. I'm gonna try to write something about Vera in the meantime. So hopefully.
Brilliant. How about Ultravox? This means nothing to me. Vera to me. Okay, forget it.
What's I know? All I heard is this means nothing to me. I missed what you said.
Oh, do you remember the Ultravox song Vienna?
Oh no, I don't know. I don't.
Oh, you do. This means nothing to me. No.
No.
John, he wasn't even born then.
Oh, I thought it was like a standard. You know, it become.
It could be a classic though. I can miss things like
It's mid-Euro with the moustache. You can't miss it.
And the coat.
And the coat.
I'll listen to it as soon as I go on the way home right now. Well, actually, I have to bowl right now, so I'll give you back to Johnny.
Thank you. You're seeing dancing in the background, in the shadow.
It's very decent. Johnny, I don't know if you can hear us. Johnny, anyway, thanks. Johnny arranged The Prince of Pot and he arranged Richie Sheehy. Dan, are you familiar with Richie Sheehy's song about Salah?
The Salah song, yeah, I've heard it. Yeah, 100 million hits. How bad can you get?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too shabby for another Cork. I mean, it's a very Cork show, isn't it?
Well, what can I say? It's in the water.
Dan, what happened last week? You were saying that you had to go to. I mean, we were called off to. Was there an emergency?
He was off on the piss. He was out.
No. Actually, I was no. We tried to be a kind of an honest broker in this Patrick Street thing with the caravan.
Oh, right.
And we got a few of the local traders together. And it was actually upstairs in the Roundy. But I pulled away when 10 o'clock came. But I didn't have enough time to get home. So I know the people in the Bodega, and they were going to let me in the back. It was quite quiet, actually, for the day of the week it was. But I think they were going to turn off the music and everything, but somehow the connections didn't work. I was getting worried because it said I was being blocked by one person in particular. I don't know if there's a kind of a individual censorship button that we're all supposed to have or something.
That's very worrying. Yeah. But you're playing a kind of like you're the middle man in between the council.
Well, we tried to. We figured that because people know what our attitudes toward cards are, that we weren't pretending to be anything other than that to people, but we weren't going in belligerently. We wanted to give people time and space to say what they were saying. And it's got a bit more militant on the part of the traders. They're now talking about a rate strike. They're talking about blocking up buses and stuff like that. It could get quite ugly. And the thing is, it's only a couple of weeks in, and you always get these kind of reactions when kind of public transport and pedestrianisation is there. And it's a particularly Irish thing because it seems to work everywhere else. The business gets better when you improve the environment of a shopping area, but they're not seeing it in Patrick Street at the moment.
No, and they're not really given a lot of time to bed in.
No.
Okay. Sorry, Olga, will we finish off tomorrow's papers, if the Irish ones at least? Just on the Dennis Norton thing. So you think he will survive, Dan?
I think he will.
You think he will, Vanessa? Yeah.
I think it's a nothing story.
Really?
Yeah.
You think the wind farm? It's just a kind of this is the way life goes on.
I don't think it has any impact. It's sneaky and it's conniving, and it's it kind of gives the message that this is how these ministers conduct themselves. And I just think it's a bad message that goes out to the general public at a time when ministers and politicians should be doing better and presenting themselves better and kind of proving the last government and the government before that wrong. Like they're not all like that. At a time when they should be kind of really leading from the front, and they're just going backwards, to be honest with you. And, you know, Denis Naughten should have known well better. I mean, he's not an idiot. He's not an, you know, one of, you know, like, kind of, don't want to look down my nose, but I mean, he's an accomplished, educated man, you know.
That's
and
his defense is that he was an idiot, apparently. I mean, that's...
Well, yeah, but the thing is, he's not. He's probably the smartest man in, Finnegan.
Well, no, I mean, his defense in this respect is that he didn't know. Or...
That's bollocks. I mean, come on.
Well, I mean, I think Vanessa, I think if a Fine Gael communications minister doesn't recall, you know, events with a former communications minister and companies in relation to Denis O'Brien, I mean,
yeah, but do you know what?
Insane that he would.
Lads, Denis O'Brien is losing track of everything he owns. So how are people that are just acquaintances of his supposed to keep track of everything he owns? I mean, it's just massive. It's like it's companies on companies on companies on companies, and I do know you'd need an entire directory to.
This is I&M. I mean, I don't think there was any confusion as to.
Well, no, I get that, but at the same time, you know, Denis Naughten's also in charge of the rural broadband tender and rollout. You know. Focus on that, everybody, and not worried about him talking to a PR guy. You know, the guy, well, first of all, the guy was a lobbyist. Stop calling it a PR. He was a lobbyist, you know, just because they're putting the name PR in front of it. Like, get me. I don't think it's a big story. I think it's a nothing story. I think it's a diversion.
Diversion from?
I think they're like the rural broadband is still not on the floor of the Dáil for discussion. That's one of the most important rollouts they should be looking at. I mean, Dan mentioned earlier on about the urban-rural divide, and I've said time and time again, there's Dublin and there's not Dublin. And particularly if you want to address the housing crisis, you need to start doing something about what's not Dublin and getting even the broadband would be a huge part of that.
Okay, well, we're just talking about Denis Naughten more than the broadband thing, but Olga, is that
that's the Times Ireland. The Examiner there, like Dan was talking about earlier, this the car ban.
Great. Can you share that with us?
Yeah. Oh, can you? Is it not showing?
No.
Is it not showing? It says it's showing. No.
Can you see that, Johnny? Can you see that, Vanessa?
Yeah, I can see it.
So basically, it's saying that the car ban to be parked after just 3 weeks. Special council meeting called to recommend temporary suspension. So it's a story by Owen English. The controversial afternoon car ban on Cork's St. Patrick's Street looks set to be suspended tonight after just 3 weeks. The move follows weeks of controversy and intense pressure from traders who branded the move a disaster, which was what Dan was just saying. So a special city council meeting has been called for this evening, during which councillors are expected, so that's obviously tomorrow, Friday night, during which councillors are expected to recommend the temporary suspension with immediate effect of the street's 3 to 6:30 daily car ban for up to 4 months.
Wow, and that's amazing that we just got Dan there. Maybe Dan rushed off to...
Yeah, maybe he read it. So that's that. Alliance ministers push for councillor pay rise. Independent Alliance ministers are rallying councillors and candidates for upcoming elections, promising them an inside track to government business and privileged access to information. South East Cath Lab would not have saved silent heart attack victim. That's the man Tom Power who died down in Waterford. No Trump Leo wind farm paper trail. Fáilte Ireland. This is Joe Logan, Fiacre O'Connor. Fáilte Ireland says it had deleted all its former CEOs' emails confirming there is no paper trail to show how he handled then Tourism Minister Leo Varadkar's controversial query. Interesting then, because Times Ireland has got something under freedom of information. Anyway, okay. I haven't had time to read all that, sorry.
That's the Examiner and
a story about
a great picture of a dog.
Beautiful dog.
On screen.
It was in Phoenix Park. Yeah. Oh, gorgeous.
Simply stunning.
And his ice cream.
This is gorgeous, isn't it?
Isn't he?
It's just once.
The creamy, buttery, sugary stuff. Yeah.
Would the owner now share that with like, would she have a bit herself now? See, that's where it gets.
No, the owner would have bought the doggy one as well.
Johnny, I just want to say thank you very much for organising Mark Emery and the principal and Richie Shee. Mark was fantastic and Richie was brilliant. Thank you.
Added to that. Vera was there as well. I'd say I'm really looking forward to looking back on it.
Vera was fantastic. And then, Vanessa said, "Oh, she was on Pat Kenny last night. She said the exact same thing."
Like the plant that was in the Pat Kenny show was just ridiculous. Like,
there was a plant
there. Yeah, and Vera just basically turned around to him and said, "Listen, you're basically saying people in Holland haven't a clue what they're talking about."
There was a marijuana plant in the audience.
Yeah.
No.
There was two planks. There was one plank and one plant. The plank was asking the ridiculous question. We've moved on the conversation. This is where it's at, in an undisclosed area in the capital tonight. People have laughed and sang and had a brilliant evening on the back of a lovely sunny day. And here's the thing: tomorrow is a beautiful sunny day again. So use your patriotic duty and right to just march on and have a bit of crack. There's going to be some great speakers again, some great music, and it's all happening outside the customs house on the quays. Okay, so get on down there from about 12 on, and then the 4:20, 21 split salute to the great ones that went before us, like Howard Marks and Bob Marley and whoever else, and partake in something that was natural from Mother Earth. And I'm sorry to be getting all off the wall, but I really met some interesting heads here tonight, and there's going to be more than that tomorrow. And I see Neil was on it as well. So this thing is real. And so out of everything that Vera and Ava had to go through, I think that there is a really good positive light in relation to that. People are standing up and being liberated because we're just following suit from other civilized countries. And that was the vibe we got tonight.
Well, I also,
Johnny.
Yeah, but Johnny, I also think, the internet, people are learning themselves. They're not waiting on information to be distributed from the GP or the local health boards or the local know-all.
Regulation and tax. Money goes back into the HSE and stuff like that. Sorry,
no, but people are realizing, they're learning out the truth for themselves as well. So there's a lot of that as well.
Yeah,
there's no excuse for ignorance. Like, you've got the internet and then you got broadsheet on the telly. Absolutely. This is what happens, lads. Delighted to be of service. Rock on.
I'll do the Disclosures Tribunal. We're going to do we're going to go through it in 4 minutes.
Okay, well, if I can just focus on one thing. Like, everyone's read the headlines. Okay, we know pretty much what happened, but we'll do a comprehensive post. But I think one of the most significant things is that Superintendent Frank Walsh, who was Martin Callanan's private secretary, and he was also Noreen O'Sullivan's private secretary when she took over. And he was asked a question about what he believed, or what were the rumours that he heard about Maurice McCabe in late 2013 and early 2014. And he said that the rumour he heard, and I'm going to read this out, I suppose the motive that was being spoken about at the time was that he wasn't happy with how the DPP's directions were conveyed to him, arising out of the alleged incident that occurred some years previously, and that perhaps that he was some way annoyed over this as well, and was getting his own back on his management. They were the types of rumours. So what that effectively is saying is that Maurice was angry with the DPP, and he was making complaints. He was making complaints based on this business of the DPP's directions, how they were conveyed to him. And what's interesting about that is that in the O'Higgins module and in the O'Higgins investigation, that was the very allegation that was put to him when he was in the witness box, was put in the Chief State Solicitor's letter, and was put in the written submissions. And in the O'Higgins Commission and in the tribunal which looked at the O'Higgins Commission, this was passed off as an error, a complete error, this claim. And it's just interesting that in late 2013, early 2014, the private secretary of Martin Callanan was saying this was a rumour that was going around. And so I think that puts the whole O'Higgins stuff in a new light, personally. Yeah. But we'll have to wait and see.
Okay.
But obviously there was a lot more. There was a lot happened. But
yeah, it was a busy. But there'll be a post in the morning. Won't there on that particular thing?
Yeah.
On the Walsh thing.
Yeah.
Can I ask you something, Olga? Well, maybe John knows as well. Martin Callanan, I read somewhere, it wasn't on BroadTube, but I read it somewhere else, or found. For some reason, I've been told, or I found out, that Martin Callan was also part of the Heavy Gang. You know, that group of detectives
in Dublin.
But they would go down. They would have been down in Carsavine, or you know.
Well, I think allegedly.
So I'm just wondering, had you heard anything?
No, I haven't.
I mean, the Heavy Gang. I mean, the guards claim that the Heavy Gang didn't exist. You know, that still to this day.
But they were quoted as being the Heavy Gang at the time, weren't they? The elite.
I know Gene Carrigan actually did a lot of brilliant work on that. And,
well, apparently he was in that Heavy Gang. So.
Well, okay. Well, we don't know that for sure. Just legally, sort of.
Apparently.
Well, no, we can't even say.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
No, not even allegedly. We don't know if he was in the Heavy Gang. You know, they're
Am I in trouble now?
So we don't want to implicate.
So they can always come on and defend themselves.
We can meet him at a car park.
Yeah, Johnny, you can meet him.
Listen, man. So we're all in the one love.
So
we got the best. We got the best cops in the country. Can I just say? Because they don't need the force of a weapon that has bullets in it. You know, that's at the end of the day, they're very rational guys. You know, everyone knows a cop or related to a cop.
You're absolutely right, Johnny. More tobacco. Sorry, Olga. So Gerald Keane was
that was last week. Yeah, that was last Thursday.
Yeah, sorry,
that's okay. But yeah, Frank Walsh was the conduit for Martin Callan's 4 paragraphs that were sent, but that were put in the letter that that Keane sent to McCabe. So remember when this letter was sent to McCabe after McCabe sent a letter to Keane after the comments he made in Marion, and Callan basically contributed to this letter, this legal letter that Morris had sent him. And so Frank Walsh was the person who gave him those 4 paragraphs. And if you probably heard during the week that Charlton said this was really, really, really strange. That was the quote. That Callan, that Keane had asked for Callan's help. And this has to be put in context. Frank Walsh, who was the private secretary, was with Callan. We're in the commissioner's office. The letter comes in from Keane. Frank Walsh says and maintains that he had no idea that Callan had helped Keane before the show and gave him the information. So what Charlton was saying to Frank Walsh was, you must have thought that Callan had actually lost his mind, that he would help this private citizen in his case against another private citizen. It had nothing to do with him. If you know, because Frank Walsh said he didn't know that Callan had briefed Keane. But Frank Walsh said that they had a discussion, that they both thought it was inappropriate, but that Callan said to him, but Gerald Keane is a friend of the guards. And so that's what happened. He was sent down with this letter, and Frank Walsh maintains that when he went down and gave Gerald Keane these 4 paragraphs, Gerald Keane never mentioned the fact that Callan had helped him had briefed him before he went on Marion, which is kind of beggars belief, you know.
Yeah, it's getting very, very sad, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of layers, and it's obvious now. Like, we've had Pat Rabbit has come in and said stuff about what a former Garda driver said, and the Garda driver is denying. So there's a big split now. You know, just allegation, counter allegation, allegation, counter allegation.
Okay, and when does it come back again?
The 30th of April.
30th of April, because they're using the whole next week. Vanessa, I'm afraid we didn't get to the INM ODC story, but your post is there today. Vanessa's did a post on the ODC. Why aren't the inspectors being allowed in? Why aren't they inviting them in? Johnny Keenan, thank you so much for joining us from an undisclosed location, the Grand Social, I think it is.
Vacation, I wish.
Vanessa Foreign, celebrity accountant, thank you very much.
Nothing. Come here. Does anybody? Yeah.
In absentia, Dan Boyle from the Green Party, who's the car ban in Patrick Street is probably upset about that. The cars are back on Patrick Street, and Olga Cronin at the sheet, and Richie Sheehy, and Mark Emery, the Prince of Pot, and myself, John Preposterous Ryan.
And Vera.
Of course. Oh no, not say Vera. Oh right.
She means everything to me. Vera Toomey. Thank you for everybody. Thank you, everybody. I'm just have to go to the bathroom. We'll hopefully see you on the site tomorrow or here next Thursday. Thank you so much. Namaste.